B253 now has top bar, Langstroth, and mason bee hives all over Tacoma. All right, team, we're going to talk about the different types of pollinators and which ones we support in B253. This graphic, although pretty blurry, just outlines a couple different types of pollinators. We've been focusing on honeybees specifically in B253 for about 6 years, but this past year or two we've started focusing on other types of bees as well. So this presentation is going to go over Bumble and mason bees, but as you can see, there's tons of other things to support in your garden and in your yard, so don't forget about things other than bees. So I bet these are the hives you're used to seeing in class. We have a Langstroth where the bees enter through the bottom and it has two tops. One that keeps the protection from the elements and one that helps with ventilation. Inside we have our frames where the bees put the honey. You've probably seen these. They change different colors the more you use the wax. This is our new top bar hive. Miss Hinson, the bus driver, gave it to us. So inside, you expand the hive by adding in these panels, so the hive actually gets wider instead of getting taller through the season. You can see this one has propolis because it's been used. That's where the bees cover up the entrances to help with the air protection. As you keep adding these panels, the hive is able to expand outwards. So this one is a leftover panel from last year. You can see how dark the comb is because it's been used for a while, and there's still capped honey in the top. This panel actually looks a little bit fresher. It looks like they still had brood and we're still able to use that. As you add these different panels in this top bar hive, you have more space for more bees. B253, we mainly focus on honeybees. We always teach people about the three different types of bees within the hive. There are workers, which are the females, drones, which are the males, and queen, which there is only one per hive. She is also a female, but you can see that her anatomy is quite different, and she only leaves the hive one day her whole life, and that is to mate, so you'll rarely ever see a queen. Workers are the bees that you're generally seeing at plants, as they are the ones that are pollinating and collecting nectar to turn to honey for the hive. Drones are simply used for mating, and they're only produced in the spring and early summer. I like having the drones around because they're the easiest to show people who are nervous about a hive. Since they don't sting, they're really easy to get used to having bees crawling on you. Orchard mason bees are another type of pollinator that we've started to use, but they are solitary pollinators. So we have been putting out mason bees and honeybees throughout Tacoma. Mason bees each take on one of these tubes you see in the image, and they go to the back of the tube and lay their first egg. With this egg, they leave pollen and nectar and create a mud-based cap that creates a chamber. That's why they're called mason bees. They use mud from the soil to come in and create their structures. Each female mason bee will mate with a male and then start to deposit eggs. With the egg, there will be some nectar and pollen, and then it will be capped, where another egg with nectar and pollen will be laid. This will continue a pattern of mud, egg, nutrients, mud, egg, nutrients, until the tube is full, and then it's capped and on to the next. If you do have mason bees, it's good to open the tubes in late spring and clean them off. If you leave tubes intact, if a cocoon doesn't hatch, it then blocks the other cocoons behind it. I do want to say thanks to all the students who have helped make this PowerPoint. Each year we have more and more projects around these pollinators, and so it's nice to be able to use you all's work as a resource. So thank you to anyone who's worked on this PowerPoint. Now that we've talked about mason bees and honeybees, let's take a look at this one. At the top, it'll fit a lot of different types of pollinators, and that bottom block is meant for mason bees, except it doesn't open like the hives we looked at before, which allows you to clean it out. The side is meant for bumblebees. Honeybees are never ground dwellers, but bumblebees do produce their habitats underground. They build their hive much like a little popcorn underneath the ground, whereas honeybees build hexagons and generally in trees. The life cycle for a bumblebee starts in the spring when an adult female who mated over winter emerges from hibernation. She stores herself underground, keeping warm from the frost, and when she comes out, she collects enough pollen and nectar to survive on her own. But after she builds up enough to create a small hive, she will start laying her first brood. These brood become the adult workers, similar to a honeybee hive, except many of them will become queens. There's not just going to be one at the end of the season. A specialized adaptation that bumblebees have is that their vibration can actually open the anthers, releasing pollen from different species. So bumblebees can be uniquely adapted to certain plants to release its pollen. This goes over the life cycle of a honeybee. The honeybee life cycle is very different than the bumble and the mason bee. The worker bees that you see around town and the worker bees that are out doing most of the pollinating only live about 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Queens, on the other hand, can live 3 to 5 years, and drones usually live at least around 8 to 10 weeks. There is only one bumblebee queen, similar to the honeybee hive. However, many of the younger bees will become queens throughout the season. For mason bees, each female will die off during the winter, and then the young will sprout in the spring. Thanks for joining to learn about the different types of hives. I hope you enjoyed this video.